Hi, my name is Jake Esplin, and thank you for joining me here today on the Washington State Legislative Action podcast presented by the Spokane GOP. As always, I have the great privilege of hosting some pretty amazing people that are doing incredible work throughout the state of Washington. I bring them on here to talk about the state of Washington politics and the Republican Party. And right now, we are smack in the middle of a session, so things are moving pretty quickly. Luckily, I have with me a very special guest who is the head of the Legislative Action Committee, Mrs. Stephanie Brendan. Stephanie's going to highlight some of the bills that are moving forward to the second half of the legislative session and give us a rundown on what's gone on so far. Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you, Jake. I'm happy to be here.
Great. Happy to have you. Stephanie, could you remind us a little bit about some of the mission or vision of this Legislative Action Committee? Because I understand it's pretty new.
Yes, it's a brand new committee. The Spokane County GOP had just added this committee last fall, and I'm the new chair of the committee. And so we're just still recruiting, volunteers, but our goal was to get more grassroots participation and activation in the legislative process, to bring awareness to what bills are really important to the Spokane County GOP party, to get our PCOs and our volunteers involved in this and helping us to spread the word. So our mission vision is to be vocal. We want to support our Republican legislators, and we also want to hold them accountable if we don't agree with how they're voting on some of the bills.
So you mentioned the bill. Obviously, the big part of this is the legislation. What are some of the hot topic bills that are moving through the session this far? I mean, I know we've only gotten about halfway through, but I think there's a few that probably stand out to some folks.
Yeah, a few that I'd like to highlight that are still moving through. House Bill 2494 would increase state funding for operating costs in schools. This was kind of a last minute bill. There was a bill cutoff last Wednesday, and this one was introduced actually after cutoff. And they were saying it's an emergency, and that's why it went through after cutoff. So it dropped Friday night and didn't really give people a chance to, prepare for the public hearing that was then scheduled first thing Monday morning. But we were able to get the word out. Other groups like Conservative Ladies of Washington, and I think Influencing Olympia and the Family Policy Institute. There were some other groups that do put also the word out about bills. We had over 2,000 people signing in con against this bill and only a couple hundred for the bill. But even with that, it still got passed out of executive committee and referred to rules. So we are expecting it to move to a floor vote. And the problem with this one is it's just more government funding for schools when we have on our ballots right now. I think my ballots due February 13th for my local school levy to renew the levies or to add capital funds with the bonds. So it seems like a way to kind of bypass the voting process for funding schools.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was just about to mention, to me, operating costs in schools sounds like something that would traditionally be on a ballot. It's pretty crazy that's being removed, especially so expeditiously. So
Hmm. And at a time when enrollment is down, that we have many fewer students going to public schools, so it just seems like it's going in the wrong direction.
mhm. So, other than the school bill or school funding bill, are there any other bills that you're really concerned about?
Yeah, there's two others I'd like to mention. One is House Bill 2118, protecting the public from gun violence by establishing additional requirements for business operations of licensed firearm dealers. In short, this bill would put a lot of these legitimate firearm dealers out of business. So I think you're targeting, the wrong place. It's not going to reduce gun violence. This is the law-abiding citizens buying from licensed dealers, and it would make it much more difficult for Washington residents to purchase firearms in Washington. And then one other bill, Senate Bill 5770, is property tax reform. And this bill would triple the growth rate of annual property tax collections for Washington. Where there's a 1% cap currently, it would raise it to a 3% cap. This at a time when food and gas, and inflation and everything else is so high. I know a lot of people just struggling to pay their rent and get by from day to day. And oh, am I going to pay my rent, or am I going to buy food for my family? And then you're going to also increase, property taxes for people. It just doesn't make sense.
Okay. So the Legislative Action Committee, you've got all these bills in front of you. How are they, is the committee and the folks that are assisting you helping with these situations and addressing these pieces of legislation?
So we're just trying to keep track of some of these bills and get the word out. So we do a weekly email right now through the session. It's been coming out on Sunday. And we list the bills that are having a public hearing. And we have the button so you can click pro or con, to sign in for or against those bills. That's just like a 30-second quick thing anybody can do. And then if you have a little bit more time, people can sign in with a written summary, write a little paragraph or bullet points about why you are for or against a bill. And if you have a flexible schedule, you can also sign in with a verbal testimony through Zoom, and actually share directly with the legislators on a Zoom meeting why you are for or against a bill. And so we encourage people to do that. We've tried to recruit more volunteers to help with that. And then any citizen can always email your legislator. You are their constituents. They want to hear from you. They track that. It's very a good process to email your legislators about the bills that you have concerns about.
Well, great. Thank you so much. Stepping aside from the legislation a little bit, is there anything going on generally now in the Republican Party that you think folks should be aware of?
We are coming up on our since it's a presidential election year, we have a county convention, and it's Saturday, March 2nd. And this is when we had all had our precinct caucuses, and we voted for delegates and alternates to go to the county convention. And at the county convention, we can, say what president we're supporting, what governor we're supporting. Guests can attend and listen in and hear about platform changes and resolutions. The two governor candidates are going to be at the convention in the morning. Sammy Bird and Reichard will both be there. So it's an important event. And then the delegates that get voted on and make it through from the county will then roll up to the state convention that's later in April. And all of this information can be found on just the main homepage of the Spokane County GOP website.
Awesome. And one more thing, one question I had for you. The last time we spoke, you had mentioned Let's Go Washington. For some of those folks that maybe didn't get a chance to listen to that first bit where we first spoke, would you briefly just touch on what that is?
Yeah, so there were 6 initiatives to basically undo some terrible bills that passed into law in the last legislative session. And all 6 of those had, received enough signatures, over 400,000 signatures each, to meet the criteria to be taken seriously in Olympia. They've all been certified. They haven't received any time in the legislative session yet. It's possible for the legislators to propose, changes or different version of those initiatives. But either way, we expect to see them on our ballots in November. And so that's just the people. This is a huge grassroots movement, and people spent a lot of time gathering and signing the 6 initiatives. Many of them were about lowering taxes like the gas tax. And we need those voices to be heard and these initiatives to be taken seriously in Olympia.
Well, great. Stephanie, I want to be mindful of your time. Thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to chat with us. Is there any parting thoughts you'd like to mention before we go?
No, I would just encourage everybody to take some action, to stand up and speak up and show up.
I like that. I like that. And if you like this podcast, be sure to give us a like or a follow wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to see more of this or get involved in the Spokane GOP, you can visit our website at SpokaneGOP.com. And as Stephanie mentioned, we got to stay informed and stay vocal. And together, I truly believe we can make a positive difference in not just Olympia, but the entirety of the state of Washington. Thank you.